Okay, so on video 2, we were going through the prospect searcher and trying to find the exact target audience that we want to go after with our campaigns. And now what we're going to go through is what happens once you actually add those contacts. So when I go ahead and add contacts, I can either, again, add them directly to a campaign or I can add them to a list. But either way, once I press add prospects, what they're going to do is they're going to move from the prospect searcher into the contacts page. So the contacts page is the next part of our application. And the difference between these two sections is that prospects is like your Amazon shopping cart, while contacts is the place where all of your contact data is stored, the contact data that you own. So any list that you've imported, any list that you've pulled and added from the prospect searcher will show up here. So to make this a little bit more legible, I'm going to actually sort out a specific campaign that I ran, but I could also filter specific contact lists. So again, I could search that owner April 7th list. But in this scenario, I'm going to pull up a campaign that I had running on LinkedIn. The cool thing that happens once I search this is that I can actually see all of the contacts that have been added. So in that case, if I added the campaigns directly to the contacts directly to a campaign, they would show up here. So if you're ever wondering whether your contacts did successfully add to a campaign, it'd be smart to search the campaign and see if they're here. Or if you're wondering whether you selected verified emails only and you're wondering where they are or whether they got added, search for that specific list when you're in this section. Now, I can actually click through and see all the contacts that are part of this criteria, as well as all of the contacts that have been added to a campaign, all of the contacts that have been messaged, the contacts who have either accepted my connection request, if this is a LinkedIn campaign, or opened my email if this were an email campaign. So again, you can see either email or LinkedIn campaigns here, and I can see who has responded. So as a salesperson, this is really what I want. I want to see the 30 people who have responded to me. I can now click into any one of these contacts and see all of their corresponding contact information that I need as a salesperson to keep working the lead, as well as the conversation and where it left off. So this should give me everything that I need to keep working this opportunity. Now, on that contact page, you can also export any list. You can also import any list that you have. So if you have an email subscriber list, or if you have a list of contacts that attended some conference or something that you got because you sponsored an event, you can always go ahead and import a list here. And this is the best place to add that CSV information. So I'm going to go ahead and select a CSV file. And I'm going to have to map the fields. So this mapping part is pretty important. You want to make sure that all of the columns from the data set, so if you had first name, last name, email, LinkedIn profile, all that stuff, you want to make sure it matches up properly with what our system understands. So it seems like company name was missed. So I'm going to add company name, or company name for emails means a natural version of that company name. I would go through these one by one and make sure everything's matched up properly. And then at the very bottom, I'm going to want to update the status. So I'm just going to move my little talking bubble here. And I want to make sure that the contact stage is set as available, meaning these contacts are all ready to go. They're ready to receive messages. Or another thing I might do is I might set them as blacklisted, which would basically mean that these contacts should never in any situation receive a message. Maybe they're my existing clients or competitors. Then I would go ahead and go to the next step. I can add them to a sequence. I would always recommend giving this list a name. So maybe I call this Katrin's sample list April 7. Finish. And then these contacts are going to get added to that list. And what I should do is in maybe 10-15 minutes, go back to the contacts page and search for those contacts, because this can ultimately take 5-10 minutes for those contact lists to import. In this case, it did go ahead. I got a little notification here that it did import, so I can go back to the contact page and I should be able to search for that list. Okay, so just for the sake of time, I'm going to go ahead to campaigns. So campaigns is the next part of our application, and this is really the meat of what you're going to be doing in the GrowthGenius app. So here you can create your LinkedIn campaigns or your email campaigns across your team, or even just for you as an individual. So what I'm going to do is scroll up and search my specific campaigns. And when I search for my campaigns, it's going to filter out everyone else's stuff so that I can find that same sample. So I'm going to pull up the LinkedIn Katrin Sales Leaders campaign. When I click on it, it's going to show me all of the scheduled messaging that's part of this campaign. So when you're creating the messaging for LinkedIn, just note that it's always going to start with a connection request. So in this case, I want to do a split test. So I created connection request 1A versus connection request 1B. So that I could test out whether sales background or hustle performed better. And sure enough, I can see the metrics that I got a higher acceptance rate, response rate, and interested rate compared to the split 1A. So always recommend using these split tests so that you can see what messaging is going to work better with your demographic. How this works now is that we are ultimately automating sending a connection request and a follow-up message. So those follow-up messages that you see on the bottom of your screen when you're having a heart-to-heart with a friend on LinkedIn, that's what these follow-up messages are going to be. And they'll only come after a contact has accepted the connection request. So I have it set that 9 minutes after someone accepts my connection request, they're going to receive this follow-up message. And if they don't respond to that one, then 2 days later, they get another one, a day later, another one, right up until they get my breakup message. And that's all they're going to get. If they respond to any of these messages, then the automation will stop. They will not receive any other messages as part of this campaign if there is a response. Now, two other things you may have noticed. One is that there's this company name here. There's also first name here. So we are using some variables in this messaging. If you ever want to add custom variables or your own variables, the easiest way is just to pull up these brackets here. And it's going to show you all of the contact data that's available as part of this data set. So when I was in the contacts page and I pulled up Erica, all of her information was there on the right. That's what's being referenced in this section. So maybe I just actually am looking for first name. So I just type it up here, and sure enough, first name is right there. I click on it, and now it's going to give me the exact format that our system likes for this type of output. But I never trust these things, so I want to double check. I click on the little eyeball there, and I can actually select a contact that's been added to this campaign and see what is this going to look like when I reach out to Kevin at New Age Experts LLC. And sure enough, gather your swamp, Kevin, all the best at New Age. So we actually have some algorithms that will naturalize company names. So this company name informal is a company natural algorithm. And then we are also normalizing the first name to make sure that it's grammatically correct. So capital first letter, lowercase following letters. But that's in general how you're going to go about managing your sequences as far as the messaging is concerned. Now, other things that you can do is from this campaign view, you can see all the contacts that have been added to this campaign. So it's similar to the view we're seeing on the contacts page. And I can turn on auto prospect, which is a really cool feature. Basically, what it's doing is it's taking the saved search that we did in the prospect searcher. I take that saved search and say, I want to add 50 contacts that meet those criteria to this campaign every single day. And I turn this on, press save, and it's automatically going to add, I guess, 46 contacts to my Katrin Sales Leaders campaign that meet these criteria every single day. This is going to save you a ton of time and make your life a lot easier. I think the number one place where people really drop off with these kind of lead generation campaigns is their consistency. They'll run one campaign and then they'll never run one again. And they'll think, oh, well, this didn't work for me. Well, if you only do something once and you don't test it out and learn why something's working or why it's not, you'll never improve. So recommend doing the auto prospect so that you can just have this campaign always creating opportunities for you in the background without having to go through the step of pulling a batch of 500 contacts every 3 weeks. Instead, you just turn on auto prospect and it's doing all the work for you. Okay, next I just went in to create a new campaign. So the easiest way is to press this plus button at the top of the screen. And what that does is it brings me here, and this is where I'm going to create a new campaign. So to decide whether I want to do an email campaign or a LinkedIn campaign, I select it right here. So now I'm selecting an email campaign just to show you something a little different. And I can add contacts from a list. So if I did have that saved list, I'd be able to reference it here, and it would automatically add the contacts to this email campaign. But I'm going to go with the next steps. I could also upload a CSV, so that will look very similar to what we did on the contacts page, and that will add contacts directly to this campaign as well. If I click here, it's going to bring me right back to the prospect searcher. So just be prepared for that. And then if I were to add a CSV file, I would have to map the fields again, which I'm not doing. And so I'm going to skip to add messages. So the main difference between setting up an email campaign and a LinkedIn campaign is that you're going to be tracking open rates rather than acceptance rates. And we have rich text options. So because email allows for different formatting, we can now have links, images, videos, fonts, headers. We are going to be mimicking the same kind of fonts and formatting that a Gmail account would have. So it's not going to be any crazy CSS or anything. It's really just trying to mimic if you were to send out a message on Gmail to someone that you want to connect with, what would that look like? What would that sound like? What would the feel of that be? And that's what you're trying to mimic. You can still do your split test again, add whatever messages, say that I wanted it to be a week in between these messages, or a day, or 3 days, or 4 days, whatever it is, you set the cadence in between each of these steps. All right, so that is campaigns for you. You would just go ahead and launch, and that's all you need to do. In the next video, we will go through the inbox, so tracking responses that are being generated as a result of these campaigns, as well as the dashboard. So learning from the metrics and analytics that we're getting as a result of these campaigns. All right, thanks, and see you soon.